call forward the second panel. Welcome. Thank you for appearing before this subcommittee to help us with our work. It is the custom in this subcommittee to ask all witnesses to be sworn. Could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to offer to this subcommittee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, let the record show that each of the witnesses has answered in the affirmative. Your entire statement will be entered into the record. Let me first offer a couple of brief introductions of our witnesses for the benefit of members present. Ms. Helen Liu is the first Inspector General to be appointed by the Board of Directors of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. She began her tenure in May 2007. As Inspector General, she conducts audits, investigations, and evaluations relating to WMATA activities to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse, and to promote economy and efficiency. Mr. Matthew Welbys is the Executive Director and Acting Deputy Administrator of the Federal Transit Administration. Mr. Welbys directs the daily operation of the agency in support of public transportation services in communities across the United States. He supports the FTA Administrator in providing leadership and establishing direction on public transportation policies, budgets, and strategic priorities. He also guides the management of the agency's $10 billion annual budget and the 500 people who serve FTA's customers. As you can hear, we're being summoned to the floor for votes. I think, however, we could probably put a good dent into opening statements and then recess briefly and then come back for the questioning portion, if you don't mind. Okay? All right. Ms. Liu, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today about our work at WMATA. I am the first WMATA Inspector General. Our office was authorized by resolution of the Board of Directors in 2006, and I began my tenure.
Sorry, may I ask you to please move the microphone a little closer to you?
Oh,
because we
close.
can't hear. At least I can't.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. I began my tenure in May 2007. I report to the board, and as such, I am independent of management. We conduct audits, investigations, and evaluations of WMATA activities to prevent and detect fraud, waste, and abuse, and promote economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. We also oversee the annual financial statement audit and the single audit of major federal programs that are performed by an external audit firm. I will highlight our work and that of our external auditor in 2 of the 4 subject areas for this subcommittee hearing: internal controls and capital improvement projects. In our audit of fair media sales, we found that the point-of-sale system maintained by a contractor lacked proper internal controls and management oversight. For example, log-on identification codes and passwords used by clerk and supervisors were not unique or confidential. There was no analysis of system logs, exception reports, and edit checks. There was no in-house oversight of the day-to-day operation of the system. Management concur in our findings about the system and is working to improve oversight and internal controls. Our audit of WMATA's accounting of capital expenditures from federal funds, we found incidents totaling $314,000 where WMATA did not use grant funds in accordance with the grant agreement. For example, a $264,000 expense for a computer was improperly charged to a grant for bus purchases. A $47,000 expense for motorcycles was improperly charged to a grant for rail maintenance. Management has since applied the expenditures to alternative funding sources, as well as reorganized its grant management process to improve oversight and internal controls. Our external auditor issued an unqualified opinion on WMATA's financial statements as of January 30, 2008. This type of opinion means that the financial statements were fairly presented in all material respects. Nevertheless, the external auditor identified 11 significant deficiencies. The most notable of these were inadequate information technology controls, such as user assets not promptly revoked upon employee termination and the lack of a disaster recovery plan. The external auditor also identified 1 incidence of noncompliance with federal regulations relating to safeguarding of bus equipment purchased with federal funds. These deficiencies are still open. Our work in the area of capital improvement projects takes the form of contract attestations and contract performance audits. In contract attestations, we look at a contractor's proposed or claim price and cost data and recommend adjustments, if any, for consideration in contract negotiations. Since May 2007, we have reviewed over $124 million in contractors' proposed and claimed costs and recommend reductions of over $26.3 million. Our contract performance audits focus on whether contractor is meeting the terms of a contract. A case in point is our audit of WMATA's contract to upgrade bus fare boxes and smart trip card and fare collection equipment. We found that the contractor missed deadlines primarily because of its untimely decision not to support the original software and WMATA's delay in deciding to implement upgrades to the software. We recommended measures to mitigate the effect of future delays and reduce the risk of obsolete technology. Management agreed. In summary, we have accomplished much in the 2 years since our office came into existence. Management has been responsive to our performance audit recommendations, concurring with and implementing corrective action to address the vast majority of them. As we go forward, we expect that our contract attestation and our contract performance audits in particular will play a valuable role in maximizing the efficient use of funds for capital projects under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We look forward to continuing to fulfill our independence oversight role, working with WMATA Board and the General Manager. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my prepared testimony. I would be pleased to respond to questions from you or other members of the subcommittee.
Thank you very much. Mr. Welbys, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Welbys, yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Welbys, you now recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the, thank you. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. Appreciate this opportunity to testify today on behalf of the Federal Transit Administration. My testimony will focus today on FTA's financial assistance and oversight of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Across the United States right now, public transportation is experiencing its greatest success in decades. Ridership is growing, many transit systems have improved their operating efficiencies, and there is widespread community support for all types of bus and rail and paratransit service. WMATA exemplifies this success right now, with ridership at record-breaking levels. WMATA's growth reflects, in part, the long-standing federal, state, and local public transportation partnership, which in fiscal year 2008, FTA delivered $237 million in funding for WMATA for capital investments, which is equivalent to 35% of WMATA's total capital expenditures for the year. Most recently, on March 10th, FTA was pleased to host the signing of a full funding grant agreement for the Metro Rail extension to Wheelie Avenue in Northern Virginia, which is the largest Metro Rail expansion since the original 103-mile system's construction. Moreover, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act brings some vital resources to the National Capital Region, providing $214 million in public transportation funds for capital improvements. WMATA will receive $202 million of this ARA formula funding, and FTA is working closely right now with WMATA to ensure that the critical milestones are met for the use of these funds. As the money begins flowing, we expect that commuters in the region are going to see much-needed improvements to public transportation. But like much of the transit industry in the country right now, WMATA faces some serious challenges as well. The success of growing ridership has put strains on equipment, rolling stock, and facilities, and the system is now in its fourth decade of operations, and reinvestment is needed. Securing the resources to ensure that WMATA can continue to meet demand, operate safely, and maintain its infrastructure is an evident need. FTA has completed and is soon going to release a rail modernization study that was requested by the Congress. The study examines the 7 largest U.S. rail transit agencies, including WMATA, and the study finds that more than 1/3 of the 7 agencies' assets are in either marginal or poor condition. In addition, the study estimates that there is a backlog of unmet recapitalization needs of about $50 billion at those 7 agencies. And FTA recognizes that WMATA's capital needs inventory covering the period from 2011 to 2020 is an important step. This inventory's identification of a total of $11.3 billion for performance, capacity, and customer experience improvements is very important. It's also important to note, and was noted earlier, that WMATA is the largest transit system in the country without a dedicated local funding source at this time. In an effort to address that need for dedicated local funding, this committee initiated the recently enacted authorization of $1.5 billion over 10 years for federal grants to WMATA. FTA is closely monitoring the actions by the District, Maryland, and Virginia, which are required to establish the dedicated local matching funds to qualify for that federal appropriation. The upcoming reauthorization of the nation's surface transportation law is going to provide an additional opportunity for considering ways to improve mobility. And Secretary LaHood has noted that an important element of reauthorization is going to be livability. And that means fostering pedestrian and bike-friendly communities, providing more transportation choices, and offering better access to jobs and housing. And the federal investment in WMATA's bus and rail systems has supported transit-oriented, mixed-use development that contributes significantly to the clustering of regional activity centers near public transportation. Finally, I do want to note that based on FTA's recent oversight reviews, WMATA is in general compliance with FTA's statutory and regulatory requirements. WMATA receives nearly $250 million per year from the Federal Transit Administration, and as a result, FTA conducts a series of oversight reviews on a regular basis. We have conducted 10 oversight reviews in a variety of areas since 2004. In general terms, WMATA's principal 2008 oversight review by the FTA identified findings in the areas of tracking vehicle maintenance, asset management, and grants management, some areas that Inspector General Liu also noted. FTA is providing direct technical assistance to WMATA to help address and close these findings. In conclusion, the partnership between FTA and WMATA has provided significant transportation benefits to the National Capital Region over many decades, and I thank the subcommittee for the opportunity to discuss FTA's role in this important federal investment. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony. I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Welby. At this point, I would like to recognize the gentlelady from the District of Columbia and ask her to please chair the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot.
You cannot.
I cannot because I'm due to open at another hearing.
Oh, okay. All right, we're gonna recess. I was gonna use 5 minutes of questioning time, but I think what we'll do.
Well, you mean while you're on recess? Because I think, wait a minute, the other hearing going on recess?
Yeah, they're going on recess, yes.
Yeah. Well, he says they're going on recess now, too. What did you want to do, Mr. Chairman?
5 minutes, sir, is a vote.
I was gonna give you 5 minutes to ask questions
Oh,
while we're gone.
I do not have any questions for this.
Oh, okay. All right. So we will recess. I apologize. This is one of the occupational hazards of these hearings. Thank you, and we'll be right back. I'd say, how many votes?
2 more after this one, 5.
Okay. Probably a half hour anyway. Thank you.
especially for the stimulus funds, not simply to come back as they must and tell us what we've done wrong, but with the hope that the IG would work with the agencies to keep them from making mistakes that might otherwise be inevitable, given the speed, the breakneck speed that they've been ordered to proceed. Could you tell us how you are proceeding? In what way are you working with, even given your auditing function? It's not unheard of for the auditors to look before something goes out. It happens all the time in one of my other committees. How are you operating so as to minimize the issues that arise when you get out funds this quickly?
I'll be glad to, Congresswoman Norton. In my testimony, I mentioned the work we do on our contract attestations. And contract attestations, we look at the contract proposals or claims submitted by contractors, and we look at the pricing of that to make sure that the pricing they have is supported and reasonable.
Now, do you have the standard? These are yours. You of course are working with WMATA.
Yes.
Is WMATA the only agency you're working with?
Yes, I'm the WMATA IG.
Well, you're in better shape than some of our IGs who are working with lots of different kinds of money going out at the same time to different parts. Are you able, before the fact, to look at the contracting dollars and other proposed ways of operating so as, given the time frames they're under?
We currently do that now. I think in my testimony I mentioned that since I've been there in May 2007, we have reviewed it, contracts
yeah,
with
see,
proposed
the problem
value.
we have here is a move it or lose it problem. So this is not like what you usually have. It's if this money isn't used, and if I were running an agency, I'd try to get that stuff out there as quickly as I could, rather than have it move away. So what I'm trying to ascertain is whether we have something different from what we've had before, where the government did not put these kind of time frames on local agencies in the past. Perhaps we should have, but we did not. So what have you done that is different about people who are under orders, as it were, to get this out and make jobs now?
We have...
do you have the staff to do it?
I certainly could use more resources to do it. I think you heard...
Well, you're not going to get more resources. So I want to know, given the fact that these people are under a breakneck, after 120 days it's gone, given the staff you have, and the fact that this money, runs out within a year and a half? The issue is obligation.
Yes.
That's what the issue is. Within a competitive system, which means that we said go shovel ready, are you finding that they are going with things that have already gone through a sufficient, is WMATA going with projects that have already gone through sufficient clearances so they're ready to go into the ground except for letting the contract?
WMATA has identified the capital projects that they would like to fund using the stimulus money. We have that schedule. We have also sat down with the Director of Procurement at WMATA, and we informed him that as soon as you're ready, let us know so that we can do the necessary contract attestations. We will give those our highest priority. We also do contact attestations.
Have any of those occurred yet? Excuse me.
We have not received any as of yesterday. I informed him. We do
Is the money been released?
No, I don't think the money's been released. They
so
have
the money
advertised.
for WMATA, the stimulus money for WMATA is not in hand?
I don't think they have award contracts yet.
No, I'm just asking if we, the federal government, have dumped it on WMATA yet.
WMATA has applied to the Federal Transit Administration. There are 2 grants that FTA will award to WMATA with ARA funds, Congresswoman Norton. And one of the grants has been submitted to FTA. It's complete. The other one is in process right now. And the total...
So wait a minute. So we're going to count it from when?
The moment the test is, for federal transit funds, 50% of the funds in the D.C. urbanized area have to be obligated, awarded in a grant from FTA to Metro by September 1st, 2009. It's a different test than for federal highway funds. And my understanding is that WMATA plans to have 80% of its federal transit economic recovery funds obligated by that September 1st deadline.
Now, wait a minute. So you have to make a decision first?
These are formula funds, and WMATA has put together the list of activities it plans to apply for and has submitted that information to FTA. And
So the time begins to run from?
The clock began running when the law was enacted, and the law said by September 1st, 2009, the 50% of the funds have to be obligated.
I guess that's because the nature of the beast here.
That's
It's
correct.
a little different from highways.
Yes. And so WMATA has to turn in information to FTA.
So what kinds of things
need to happen.
do they have to obligate for under this?
WMATA has a
these
number
grants?
of activities that they are going to use their ARA funds for, which include new bus purchases. They're going to replace some of the platforms at rail stations which are crumbling. They plan to purchase some paratransit vehicles. There's some track maintenance
There's a lot of
equipment.
difference among those things. And
Indeed, and it is...
You know, some of those things, you know, it seems to me that they could be already in operation, like repairing the station. So that's an ordinary highway job.
Right. The economic recovery funds approximately double the federal funding for WMATA during this period, during 2009, for example. So
But
there's,
apparently none of it's yet out. Does it all go out at one time? I mean, I'm trying to, the whole point was to make jobs, make them now. Some of those where you have to contract to buy buses,
yes.
that's a long timeline. Where you got to take a station and where the passengers stand is crumbling, why couldn't that kind of work be already underway?
For certain activities that WMATA plans to undertake with its economic recovery funds, they have what's called pre-award authority, where the activity is eligible for federal reimbursement, and WMATA can go forth and undertake certain work, and at a later date, we will award the grant and obligate it.
So they don't have to come to you first, they could go and
For
start
certain undertakings, they can start now, they can create and sustain jobs immediately.
But Ms. Liu doesn't indicate that there's any such project that she is performance auditing or pre-auditing. And that's what I don't understand. Because how long has it been since these funds were, when we passed this February, I believe it,
February 17th, the law was
February
enacted,
17th.
and on March 5th, the Federal Transit Administration issued a notice to our grantees that the funds were available for grants.
I see. Well, maybe I am overly anxious, but it does seem to me that some of that work, we're coming on into May, could have been started, and I'm a little concerned, even though you have until September. I'm sure that it varies. This WMATA is like a system with many different kinds of infrastructure. And I take it those grants are grant by grant, not in any one fell swoop.
In fact, Congressman Norton, we understand there will probably be 2 grants. There are 2 formula programs under economic recovery law.
And if they and basically all they need to do is to show you that they can do the job. They're not competing with other transit systems, are they, for this money?
No, they are not. These are formula funds that flow to the Washington, D.C. region, and $202 million of the $214 million in transit funds are directed to WMATA.
Well, do you think all of this is going in a timely fashion?
From what I observe for For WMATA at this time, things are moving in a timely fashion so that they will meet the deadlines for obligating funds.
And what's the deadline for obligating funds?
The deadline for obligating half of the funds is September 1st, 2009, and 100% of the funds must be obligated by March 5th, 2010. And at this moment, WMATA is on schedule.
You have no idea how many funds are obligated as of now?
At this moment, a very small percentage nationwide. There's $8.4 billion in federal transit funding from the Economic Recovery Law, and of that 8.4, about $100 million has been awarded. However, about 20% of it, or 25% of it, more than $1.5 billion, is in process right now. Federal transit grants, the grants we're discussing, require a Department of Labor certification process with the labor unions that are associated with the transit agencies, and that process can take between 2 weeks and 60 days. So we have accounted for that. The reason, one reason the highway deadline and the transit deadline differ is because we wanted to take into account, and the Congress wanted to take into account, that labor certification process. So at this moment, WMATA is on schedule to meet the obligation deadlines.
All right, I just hope that the internal bureaucracy does not become responsible for any of the delays. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let me follow up on an early line of questioning that Ms. Holmes-Norton put forward. Ms. Liu, you know, being on this Oversight Committee, one of the problems I've seen, and I even saw it before I was on this committee, is the ability, or the lack of ability, for oversight to keep up when large blocks of money for construction go forward. And I'll give you a couple examples. We had it with the Big Dig, a project in Boston, where we had a very small oversight community trying to keep up with a huge project. They were just completely outmatched by the contractor community, and a lot of money was wasted. I saw it as well being part of this committee. Did 11 oversight visits to Iraq, reviewing construction projects in Iraq. Same thing with Afghanistan. A lot of money spent in a very short amount of time with not enough oversight. We had problems. Now we've got the dedicated funding issue, which might bring a lot of money. You know, I expect to bring a lot of money into the system. There'll be numerous projects going forward, according to WMATA, and you've got the stimulus, you know, over $200 million. Do you feel comfortable that you've got? You said you could always use more people, and I think you are going to need more people, and we're going to have to. We can't just throw this money out here without proper oversight. What do you think? Give me your opinions on what you need and what you foresee in terms of a bunch of projects going on. You got to have inspectors, investigators, auditors, because some of the stuff is in-house and it's contractual in nature, not to mention the physical monitoring and inspection that needs to go on. How is this all going to happen? Reassure me, please.
Well, you raise a very good question. I definitely could use more resources. I currently have a budget about $3.7 million. I have 23 people on board, and I'm audized 29.
What's the breakdown of the folks you have on board? What are they?
I have, I think I have 18 auditors and 3 investigators, and my secretary and myself. That would be a total of 23 right now. We hope to bring in 3 entry-level individuals sometime in the June-July timeframe. But you're right, we have a huge influx of federal funds coming in now with the potential $150 million in the dedicated funding, and then you got the $202 million in the Recovery Act funds. And my experience in the federal government has been, I'm a retired federal employee, and my experience in the government is that the potential of fraud, waste, and abuse is very great. It's heightened when you have that, when you have new influx of money. You know, we saw what happened in Iraq. You saw what happened with Hurricane Katrina. So I am concerned as to whether I have sufficient resources to address the audit needs as well as the investigative needs. As I told Congressman Norton, we give the highest priority to the stimulus money that we'll be getting. And we do these contract attestations, and the contract attestations is our front-end work, where we go through these proposals, look at their pricing, look at the costs on claims, and see if that's a reasonable amount, or as opposed to them bleeding the government. We also have a role in terms of all sole source procurements. We do that contract attestation. We also, the Recovery Act encourages Buy American. But there might be things where there is no American manufacturing, we have to go foreign. We have a role to do pre-award certifications to make sure that there's a certain amount of domestic input in putting together the final product, and that our office does do that. But when it comes to contracts, we try to do select contracts to make sure that the terms of the contract are being met and we are getting what we paid for. And
not to interrupt you, but that requires folks to go out on the job.
Yes.
You can only do so much auditing. It's sort of what the Defense Contracting Audit Agency had a problem with, where they were auditing the construction in Iraq from Alexandria, Virginia. And we didn't have auditors on the ground for the longest time, first couple of years in Iraq, and it was a mess. So I'm just I'm very concerned about, having worked on job sites for about 20 years, I'm just concerned about your ability to be out there on the ground. It doesn't sound like you're set up for it now.
Yeah, well, that's very true. We don't audit from our desks. We have to get out to the field. When you do this contract attestation work, you have to do that. I have a team of 2 that's going out to Manitoba, Canada, next week to do the post-delivery certification on the Buy America, to see if they met Buy America requirements, because the buses are being purchased by New Flyer, which is a Canadian firm. It's being assembled in Minnesota, and so our audit team is going to be going to Minnesota as well. But
Yeah.
it takes resources to do the travel, and also having the resources to go out there, and it takes time to do that type of work.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we need to stay in the loop here. If you need more people, this is an important part of this. You're going to save us money by doing your job, and you also know that the appetite for expenditures and appetite for appropriations is going to diminish greatly if we start to see waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, it's just leaving yourself wide open for criticism. We don't want that to happen.
I just want to make one point,
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman. Unlike my counterparts in the federal IG community, we at the state and local level did not get any money to do our audits and do our investigations relating to the Recovery Act funds.
Well, that's a terrible lapse on our part. I wish I had known that up front. I certainly appreciate the value of your service, and I want you to be able to do your job. You're going to be the first one in line for criticism when things go wrong, so I think it behooves us to give you, well, you might not be first, we might be first, you'll be right behind us, and we'll have folks up here blaming you. Mr. Welby, let me shift to you just for a second. You offer a great perspective nationally, because you're dealing with a number of these larger transit authorities. So you have a sense that I don't of how in Washington, D.C. we compare with other systems of relatively the same size. What's your assessment on how we're doing here in terms of preparing for this sizable increase in expenditures, increase in the number of projects, the complexity of this stuff? How are we sizing up here?
I think the region and WMATA have taken some important actions. At the Federal Transit Administration, we have put together really a risk strategy and an oversight strategy associated with the ARA funds. And we have in place, of the $8.4 billion in ARA funds for transit, about 99% of it flows into existing FTA programs where we have an oversight system in place. So we do financial management oversight reviews for our projects. For the large capital projects, when they're under construction, we have project management oversight engineers who are boots on the ground, who visit with the grantees, visit the projects, and make sure the project is on schedule and on budget. And we have, in fact, a meeting with WMATA next week, our quarterly meeting, to talk about, among other things, those major capital projects. So WMATA's history of managing major capital projects has fared relatively well. The most recent significant project, the Largo Metro Rail extension, was brought in on time and on budget. And there are other large projects, such as the Wheelie Avenue Metro Rail extension, which we now have underway. The Airport Authority is constructing that project. WMATA will be the owner and operator ultimately. But Metro has a sound track record in that regard. There are certain reviews we have done recently where we do have open findings that we are working with Metro to close out. Many of them parallel those that Inspector General Liu has identified, but we are working to address those findings.
Ms. Holmes-Norton, do you have any follow-up questions?
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Let me ask you, I offered the same opportunity to the previous panel. Are there aspects of your situation now going forward, overseeing WMATA that we haven't touched upon here that you think is important for the committee to hear? Ms. Liu?
We certainly are supportive of the dedicated funding bill that would give us statutory authority within the compact jurisdiction. I think that will strengthen our ability to deal with any challenges that we get from the people that we audit, both internal and both internal and external.
Just to sort of amplify a point I want to make, this is an oversight committee. You're both doing oversight work. There's a natural alliance here that we have. We want to see the work done efficiently. We want to see the taxpayer money used efficiently, effectively. But if we don't know the problems you're encountering, and it looks like we missed an opportunity to fortify the oversight apparatus in this case, I'm going to look for an opportunity to correct that. I think there'll be vehicles where we can do that, but we've got to have the oversight in place. Otherwise, we're going to have a mess on our hands. And I appreciate the rail system. FTA does have a better oversight protocol in place. I've seen that over and over again work out better than my heavy highway projects where we don't nearly have the oversight that's necessary. So that's encouraging. But still, I think that with the drastic increase that we're going to see here in activity, there needs to be a sizable increase commensurate increase in oversight ability here, and I don't think we have it. So it's just a red flag for me, and I want to try to address that at some point. But it's going to require communications between both of you and the committee, the subcommittee especially. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Welbys, do you want to address anything that you haven't addressed so far?
I think I would just amplify 2 points. One is, as you've noted, with the economic recovery funds, by doubling the resources, the federal resources that will flow to WMATA in the coming year, there's an increased risk. And the risk for our large grantees involves taking on multiple projects that would have been spread out over a longer period of time simultaneously. So the capacity constraints that you've described with regard to our oversight resources certainly apply to the resources of our grantees like WMATA in implementing multiple projects simultaneously. The engineer or financial expert who usually would handle X number of projects will be handling X plus Y number of projects. And that's an area that we are going to be focused on going forward. We are enhancing some of our oversight tools to include additional scrutiny of the economic recovery resources. In particular, we are structuring some of our project management oversight and financial management oversight to account for that increased flow of funds. And then the second point is one that we have discussed already, but it is sort of the state of good repair needs at systems like WMATA. And over time, that caseload, that reinvestment need only grows. And so it's important to start making headway on it sooner rather than later. There are risks that increase as that reinvestment need grows. I know in the reauthorization of safety, we will be paying attention to that, and there is a discussion about how state of good repair can be addressed, but it has parallel oversight implications as well.
Well, let me, you invite a question. I understand Ms. Liu's statement that we in Congress did not adequately fund or fund at all the enhanced oversight that's necessary for her and her team to do their job. What about FTA? Did we do any enhancement there?
For FTA's regular statutory program, there are takedowns that are 0.75% or 1% for large capital projects, and that provides us with a resource that we can apply to the ARA funds as well. Congress did include in the statute a set aside for FTA oversight equivalent to about 1/3%. So it's really about 1/3 of what we would usually see for our oversight resources for this size funding. So for the $8.4 billion, we would usually see additional resources compared to what was in ARA for our usual program. And we are where we are. We're working to maximize our efficiency using that resource right now.
Okay, and again, the subcommittee and the committee welcomes your assessment as we go forward. I think you'll be able to sense whether or not that 1/3 of 1% is going to be nearly adequate. Okay. Seeing no further questions, I want to thank you both for your willingness to come before the committee and help us with our work. I thought it was very helpful, very enlightening, especially for me to understand what you're dealing with. I'm encouraged, but like I said, I got some red flags out there I'm a little concerned a bit with, but I want to thank you for your testimony here, and I bid you good day.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank you.